they were unhappy with my online activity, and they told me I should burn every item I still had in my possession, which was, you know, a sizable amount. There was a court date for the first hearing in Brussels. When I talk about the meat grinder, I'm talking about people who invest heavily, emotionally and financially. And it's normally the person who they're in bed with who manipulates them and ends up scamming them, not the guy on the street.
Hey folks, Pete here from Thairish Times. What's the story? Well, I'll tell you what the story is. I'm going to talk to a guy called James Newman, and his pen name is J.D Strange. So for the rest of this interview, I'm going to refer to him as J.D Strange. Now, J.D Strange has spent 22 years living in Thailand, and after 22 years over here, you can imagine he has some stories to tell. And the first story we have is how J.D Strange got lost on his first night in Bangkok, and how that led to a peculiar encounter with a stranger. Then we're going to move on to talk about the meat grinder of Bangkok. Now, what's the meat grinder of Bangkok, I hear you say? Well, J.D Strange is going to tell us a story about how somebody got chewed up and spit out over here in Bangkok. And then we're going to move on to a story that I found absolutely hilarious. It's how J.D Strange got sued by a cartoon character. And you all know this cartoon character. I guarantee you all know him. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into the interview. If you like it, leave me a comment, hit the like button, and subscribe to the channel. Cheers, let's get into it. James, how's it going?
Very well.
Yeah? Why did you come to Thailand, and when did you come here?
I came over here to Bangkok on a flight from London Heathrow, stopping in Muscat in 2001, and I had a friend or a girlfriend at the time. I was working in the City of London, and she was also working there. But at that time, a lot of people decided to have like a sabbatical, take a year out, go and travel. Travel in the Far East was very popular. In the late 90s, mid-late 90s, the book The Beach had come out by Alex Garland. There was this big kind of push and pull. The pull was the exotic East. There were full moon parties in Anjuna, in Goa in India, and then later in Copenhagen. And we weren't getting as much content from, well, we weren't getting any content from the internet, really. You'd have like a live cam from Lamai Beach or something, and it'd be like some shaky kind of 360 DPI image of like people walking on a beach. That was it. You know, there was no YouTube or anything like that. But I did receive postcards. I would get letters and postcards delivered to my office from my friend who was traveling through Laos and Chiang Mai and Bangkok and the islands in Koh Samui, etc. So I'd get to see the images, and the stories she told about traveling here in the early noughties were really interesting. So I thought, I should do that. Why not?
How old were you at this stage?
Well, I was lucky enough. I had a house at the time. I was working in the City of London, so I could rent out my house, and I had a bit of money to travel around. I was 23 when my interest was whetted by these correspondence, and then I went down the rabbit hole of reading travel guidebooks. So The Lonely Planet, for example, is it's an interesting format. You know, just have these brief descriptions of towns, cities, and then you'd look at the accommodation. And, being an omnivorous reader, which I always was, so, I'd read anything from Dostoevsky, like long Russian novels, to cereal packets, boxes. So the travel guidebook really fascinated me and interested me, and then I kind of built an itinerary in my mind of where to go, and eventually I bought the ticket in September 2001. I know I bought the ticket earlier than that, but I was I was supposed to be flying September 2001, the 22nd of September. And then I remember we had 9/11 and things kind of changed. So I talked about the pool being the exotic beaches and, you know, a cheap exchange rate and an easygoing lifestyle. And then kind of the push was this diplomatic, you know, kind of gesture that we had in New York. And, you know, a lot of people were trying to get away from the West back then. We forget, but there was a big push. And a lot of people I speak to came to Thailand around that time, 2000, 2001. So we arrive in Bangkok, and I'm in an area in Bang Lampu, which is kind of close to Khao San Road, but not actually on the road itself. I was in a really kind of nondescript guest house. It didn't even really have a sign on the wall. I mean, there was nothing really to remember it by on the exterior. But I remember in the interior, there were two scarlet macaws, which are like large Amazonian parrots, squawking in the lobby of this hotel. And I made the really big mistake of, you know, never do this, kids, never do this. I made the big mistake pre-internet of leaving my key with the tag, with the address of the hotel at reception, and just stumbling into the Bangkok night.
Oh no, so you would never be able to find it again?
I didn't realize at the time, but I was totally, you know, Bangkok had me.
You were in the grip of Bangkok.
I was stepping out into the void, and it's taken me like 20 odd years to kind of realize how heavy that mistake.
All right, so go on. You probably go out, you probably had a couple of drinks.
Right, so I remember there was, we stopped in Muscat, and there was an American who, some American dude had been like bivouacking in the Middle East, working for some like tech company or whatever. And he kind of took me under his wing, and he said, James, do you want to see women dance? I was like, yeah, sure. You know, I used to love ballet as a kid, whatever. So he took me in a taxi, and we went to the other side of town, which was like Soi 23, so Cowboy, which was beautifully neon lit at the time, but, you know, a shadow of, I mean, it's not the grand place we see now. And his name was Mike. I remember this guy was Mike, and he was also the guy that recommended this hotel to me, right, this guest house. So we got split up somehow in the night. So I'm completely lost by this point. I've lost Mike. I don't know where the hotel is. It's beginning to dawn on me that I have no real direction home, literally. My passport is in the room. Most of my money is in the room. I've only got a little bit of money, but I know I am staying somewhere near Khao San. So I jump in a taxi, takes me to Khao San Road. Once I get there, I read all these streets seem the same, Pete. They're all the same. How do I find this place? And I'm wandering around. It's now 3 a.m., 4 a.m. in the morning, and you know, I'm kind of at my wit's end.
How did you feel at that moment?
Anxious.
Okay.
Nervous. Lost.
First day in Bangkok, and you're completely lost.
I felt like I'd made a great mistake. So I'm on the edge of tears. I'm shuffling along some back alley around Khao San, somewhere in Bang Lampu, and this figure walks towards me, and there's like a shadowy black outline, and I can see it's a woman, and she walks closer, but then a shard of light from a second story window shines down, and I see this woman has stubble. This woman hasn't shaved for some time. So I'd heard stories about the infamous third sex, obviously from London. So I knew transgender women did operate in the capital of Southeast Asia. But she could see I was clearly upset as well. I was disturbed. I was anxious. I was lost. I was, and she said, what the matter? And I said, I think she might have said, I go room you, or something like that. I go to your room. I said, I don't know where it is. I don't know where my hotel room is. And she said, like, what your room like, or what's inside your room? And I mentioned the birds, because I remembered the 2 scarlet macaws, the 2 parrots. And I said, I don't know, but there's 2 parrots in the lobby, in the hotel reception. My eyes are welling up by this point, I'm clearly disturbed. And she says, oh, I know your room. I go before, I think she said. I go before. I show you. So I'm like, what other hope, what can I have to follow her, right? What else can I do? What other hope do I have? So I walk behind, she follows, she walks, and it's only like 2 blocks. It's like a couple of streets away. And there's this nondescript little door of this guest house, and she opens the door, we walk in, the parrots are there. These 2 birds are there, but what's more, upstairs my wallet's there and my passport and everything else is there. So I thank her, why. I take my key, I walk up the stairs, and of course she's following me. So, I wanted to be thankful, but, obviously, I didn't want to, experiment in any kind of bizarre sexuality on my first night in Bangkok. I know people do. I didn't want to, and I was slightly reserved. So I had this awkward moment at the door of me kind of closing the room door and her putting her, rather large feminine feet inside the foot of the door. And then I think I gave her...
Was she pushing the door, trying to get in?
She had her foot in the door, and she wanted to get in, but she wasn't, I could have outmuscled her if I had to. But luckily it didn't come to that, and I think I gave her 50 baht. Imagine
50
that,
baht?
50 baht. She saved my life.
You gave her £1.
I gave her £1 in 2001. Which it was probably worth more then than it is now. So yeah, I feel terrible about that. But.
Right. That's a very interesting first night in Bangkok story. Right, so we had a chat a couple of days ago in a coffee shop, right? We were looking for an idea for a video, right? And you said to me, these words, I can talk about the harsh reality of life in Bangkok, and then you called it the meat grinder of Bangkok. And I thought, oh, that's interesting, the meat grinder of Bangkok. Yeah. So what did you mean by that?
Well, I think that a lot of people come to Bangkok with really good intentions, and they end up being kind of manipulated. Or, a meat grinder, what does a meat grinder do? It chews you up, it spits you out. When I talk about the meat grinder, I'm talking about people who invest heavily, emotionally and financially. And it's normally the person who they're in bed with who manipulates them and ends up scamming them, not the guy on the street. So when I was thinking about the meat grinder, I was thinking about these big level complex scams that you hear about in the media. For example, I think I told you about the elephant sanctuary story.
Yeah, tell us that one.
Which is one which was kind of heartbreaking when I heard it, but it's kind of typical of how how people are manipulated and put through the meat grinder in Thailand. Now, this guy was from the UK. He was 38 years old. He was Oxford educated. He lived in Thailand for many years before he met who he thought was the love of his life, who was a bar girl. She worked in the nightlife scene in Chiang Mai. Now, this guy, I forget his name. It's probably best not to mention names anyway, but he was, he had a dream, and his dream was to one day own and run an elephant sanctuary. Now, his girlfriend was fully aware of his dream, and she decided, or she told him, that she could make his dream a reality for a price, and the price was 10 million baht, which she knew or didn't know that he had in savings. So this guy spoke with his girlfriend. He's heavily in love as well. And remember, there's this, it's kind of a biological, evolutionary kind of mechanism within us. If we really love somebody and we're in the kind of critical stage of a romantic relationship, we will do anything for that person. And I'm not sure if the people who manipulate us are aware of that, but it certainly seems so. And she obviously knew he had 10 million baht, and that's all he had. Like, it's all he had left in the world. He might have had to borrow a bit from family or whatever. So anyway, he puts up the 10 million baht, and the girlfriend, who has already told him there is an elephant sanctuary for sale, he can become the CEO of an elephant sanctuary and fulfill the dream of his life for 10 million baht. So he pays the money. And here's the clever part. This is the really smart part. She wrangles it with the elephant sanctuary in Chiang Mai for her boyfriend to work as a volunteer. So he's turning up to work every day. He thinks he owns the joint. He's shoveling elephant poo. He's cleaning out the cages. He's having these meetings. His Thai isn't that good. So when he's suggesting ideas for the improvement of the sanctuary and things that should be done and promotion ideas, everyone's kind of nodding and smiling because they don't really understand what he's saying. So days turn into weeks, weeks turn into months. He's still at the elephant sanctuary until one day the penny drops, and I think he tried to fire an employee. He tried to something wasn't working out with one of the staff, and they this time they had someone translate, and they said, "Look, what are you talking about? You're just a volunteer. You don't own this place." So then the mind starts working. What happened to the 10 million baht? Where I haven't seen her for a couple of weeks. She had gone to stay with her family, and I'll give her a call, see there must be some kind of mistake. I own this place. What's going on? They say I can't sack someone. So he calls her, she doesn't pick up. He talks to the elephant sanctuary. No transaction was ever made from his girlfriend to the sanctuary. That 10 million baht has become lost between him giving it to her and her disappearing to the countryside. So what does he do? He checks into a Chiang Mai guest house. He's obviously broken-hearted. He's lost the girl of his dreams. He's lost the business. And he's lost all hope, And the police find him 3 weeks later dead. He'd been left they hadn't found him for like 6 or 7 days until obviously the smell, and died from alcohol poisoning, 2 or 3 bottles of Sangsum a day, until nature did the rest. That is an example of the meat grinder.
You also said to me that you've met a number of foreigners that portray themselves to be successful, and when you peel back the layers, they're really trust fund babies.
Did I say that?
Yeah, in the coffee shop.
When you move to another country, another part of the world, you can kind of be whoever you want to be. And this was, I think, more of a phenomena back before the time of social media, when we used to have a lot of SAS, operatives and black ops and, special forces here in Bangkok, cooling off a lot of career criminals. I met some guy who pretended to be a psychologist, So you can kind of reinvent yourself as whoever you want to be in the Far East, And We also spoke about personality disorders as well, and I'd like to go into that a little bit as well, because I think a lot of people who have suffer from like narcissism or like borderline personality, you know, schizoid, avoidant, addictions, a lot of these people kind of do what we call the geographical, which is move away from where their problems are and start again. And that works on two levels. One level, because they have another chance to start in a new country, obviously. The second level, personality disorders are often caused by immediate family members and friends, so they can remove themselves from that as well. So a lot of people reinvent themselves, and a lot of people make up stories about who they are, where they come from, and what they aspire to be. If you meet someone and they seem to be doing very well in a business, which when you kind of work out the mechanics of it, you know, cash flow, where's the money coming from, where's the expenditure, and if it doesn't work out, there's normally another source of income at play. It could be an inheritance, it could be a trust fund, it could be, you know, a lot of time I think parents of kids in their 20s, their 30s would rather pay a few £100 for their son or daughter to be the other side of the world rather than keep them at home. I know it sounds terrible.
That is terrible.
It is terrible.
That's not me. You're not referring to me, by the way.
No. You're a self-made man. I meant to say, actually, at the beginning of this show, congratulations on the YouTube channel, because it's grown in the last year.
The last
phenomenally
6-7 months, it's grown a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I was really pleased to see that.
It's cool. It's a great journey I've been on. Anyway, but this is about you, not me, right? So let's actually get into some questions about you. So you've done a couple of interesting things for making money since you've been over here, right? Years ago, you sold on eBay.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell us about your eBay experience? Because you also got sued by a cartoon character.
Yeah. Tintin. Yeah, Tintin. The Belgium boy reporter. So before I was writing books and making films and doing whatever, I was fascinated by the online platform auction site eBay. You know, you get a little flutter in the heart when you're either bidding on something or when you're selling something. You know, it's a really, back in the day, it was a really fun place to work on eBay. And it was always a matter of finding what would sell. And in Bangkok, they're making so much stuff. You know, there's just so many choices. So it's almost like throwing mud at the wall and it sticks or it doesn't. But Tintin was like my first real golden boy. I mean, I bought these Tintin t-shirts just right off the street, first of all, Sukhumvit Road, and they went on. They just sold like hotcakes. I mean, they were really selling all across the world, in Chile, in Peru, in Brussels, in Amsterdam, in Adelaide, in Sydney. They were just selling everywhere, and people started wanting large volumes. You know, could you sell us like 30 or 40 rather than one? I tried to stick to retail because you make more money with retail, but I was selling wholesale. You know, I was doing thousands of Tintin items every week, and then I discovered the unofficial Tintin volume, Tintin in Thailand, written by a guy called Buddy Weiser, where Tintin and Captain Haddock and Professor Calculus go to Pat Pong, you know, and it's just this whole parody. So I found a place that could print me these, and rather than sell loads immediately, I just filter them into the market, you know, and they'd be selling, I'd buy them at 300 baht and sell them at, you know, 4,000 or 5,000 each. You know, it's a really lucrative market in Tintin. But good things don't last forever, Pete. And I remember being in my house in Pak Jong and receiving a letter from Belgium, and opening it up. It had like the seal on it. It was from the official Hergé estate, and they were unhappy with my online activity selling the Tintin brand. They were not convinced of the authenticity of the product I was selling, and they told me I should burn every item I still had in my possession, which was, you know, a sizable amount, and cease selling immediately. And there was a court date for the first hearing in Brussels, and I had a registered company at the time, so Newman Export Limited were supposed to be present in the court there to defend my case. But by this time, there was so many other copycat sellers selling the same product that I was doing that, you know, I simply left that product and moved to another more safer intellectual property. But I loved Tintin. I really loved those stories. I think Hergé was a genius. He was a great artist. He was a brilliant writer.
Are you saying this now to try and stop Hergé from suing you again?
If you're listening, Hergé, I am available for sponsorship, and I do write graphic novels. Let's get in touch. Let's write a book.
Yeah, let's get into your novels, right? So tell us, you're a writer over here in Bangkok, and you've written a lot of stuff.
A lot.
Okay, so tell us about that.
So it was kind of like a gentleman's hobby. I mean, I was writing as a kid. I would write novels, like novel-length work, when I was 8, 9 years old. I was a bit of a nerd, but I loved the English language. I loved reading, and I loved writing. You know, and I was living on Koh Samui for a while. I was there for 2 years, and you know, I didn't have internet. There was no real distraction, and I sat on my balcony and I just wrote fiction. I loved stories. I loved characters. I loved drama, and I loved crime and kind of. So I wrote the first one, Bangkok Express. I started when I was 24, finished it when I was 27, and found a publisher. And it went to market, and it did quite well. I was quite surprised. So I wrote another in that trilogy, and then another, and another. So there were 5 in the first trilogy, and you know, they sold tens of thousands of copies. So I did quite well.
Are you in Bangkok for the long haul? You're here for the next 10, 20, however many years. This your home now?
Yeah, so it's 22 or 23 years, 22 years this year, I think. And you know, God willing, I think I've probably got another 20 years.
I got more than that.
In Bangkok.
Oh, 20 years in Bangkok, and then...
I don't know about you, Pete, but I think it'd be nice to retire near a beach somewhere, wouldn't it? You know.
Do you find Bangkok draining?
No, I find it nourishing. The opposite. Yeah, I find it feeds me. I'm inspired by the things I see, hear, and do in Bangkok. So, yeah, it doesn't drain me, it feeds me.
As a Farang in Thailand, do you feel part of Thai society?
Really good question. I remember being in Koh Samui, 20 years ago, and I was in a bookstore in the main town there, Naton. And I remember seeing this thin, skeletal-like character walk down the stairs. He obviously lived there. He rented a room upstairs or something. And I remember just thinking, I was like 25, and just thinking, I want to be that guy. I would love to be that dude. You know, he hasn't got a care in the world. He lives in paradise, and he doesn't have to conform to society. So this was interesting for me. As a writer, we like to kind of live on the fringes of society or community, and only like move in when it interests us for material. So not being accepted as part of society is actually a benefit for a writer, because we spend a lot of time alone in a room creating. We don't particularly want to be accepted in society and have positions of authority within a community. We'd rather be observers on the outside, looking in and listening in. I don't think Farangs are accepted as part of a community across the board geographically in Thailand. I think you can become accepted in one community. In my local community, I speak Thai. The motorcycle taxis love me. The women that run the shop, the restaurant, I'm part of that little community. But if I go to the other side of town, I have to start again and be accepted ground level. So you don't have, unconditional acceptance as a Frang within societies in Thailand. But if you work at it, they will accept you.
We actually haven't said where we are.
Yeah, and I wanted to do some promo as well on...
Well, tell us, where are we? I don't know where we are.
We're at the 29 Bar and Grill, which is run by Keith. I've known Keith for a long time. He was the resident musician in the Check-In 99 when I was back there, and managed the new version of the Check-In 99, and has now found his feet in this wonderful live music venue on SUED 29, Sukhumvit 29.
So any future plans?
Future plans? Yeah, I'm doing a documentary. One of my more successful film projects was something called Crazy Medicine, which, probably brings in that kind of meat grinder idea of a person coming to Bangkok with good intentions and getting chewed up and spat out. But the documentary is from the same production company in London who want to see a documentary about Bangkok, a historic documentary. So we've decided to start it in 1820, which was when they had the cholera outbreak, and the bodies were taken to a temple and fed to vultures. There used to be vultures in this city 200 years ago. And we followed through historic events like challenges for the city, obstacles, things that the city has had to overcome. And it's kind of bookended with cholera 1820 and COVID 2020 and all the things that happen in between. So that means interviewing a bunch of people, a load of historical footage of the city, and hopefully at the end of it producing something that's really entertaining and fun for people to watch on TV or on live streaming.
Well, James, looking forward to seeing that when you make it. And what I'll do is I'm going to leave a link for your books in the description box. So if anyone's interested in seeing more of James's books or reading some of his books, check out the description box. And if you like this video, hit the like button, leave us a comment what you think, and subscribe to the channel and share the video as well. Apparently, a little birdie told me that sharing videos really does help the algorithm out. So if you can, share it on your Facebook, or share it with a friend, or share it whenever. And I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Thanks very much.